Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today I'm going to be talking about the documentary film Being Evil. This is a 2015 documentary that was created by Johnny Knoxville about the American daredevil Evel Knievel. This was a really, really fantastic documentary. So, one, I'm not really a fan of documentaries. You could tell Scott Garibay is in a show hole. If I'm watching documentaries, there's not much for me to watch right now. And actually, I'm sure there's plenty to watch out there, but I think television and watching media content is actually getting quite complicated to know what's where and when it's coming out and all that kind of stuff. But I watched this documentary, and it was really fantastic. I absolutely really dug it. Now, it's kind of interesting because the reason why I watched it was I have a memory of Robbie Knievel, Evel Knievel's son. I saw him on television a few times jumping things. And of course, also I was a child in the 70s, and I came across the Evel Knievel toys every now and then. They were used and they were kind of old, and they would show up in garage sales a lot. And so I think I remember playing with one, and asked my dad who Evel Knievel was, and he told me at the time. So this was a tremendously good documentary. It was really good. Not only was it really fascinating because the person Evel Knievel was a fascinating person, but the structure of this documentary was really good. I was shocked at how good it was. Johnny Knoxville put this whole thing together. And I was surprised at how honest he was, the structure he used, and also when he came at this, I really think Johnny Knoxville came at this from the perspective of hero worship. That's how he began the project. But when he actually did the research and found out who Evel Knievel was, he had to take a step back and he had to put forward a realistic portrayal of Evel Knievel. And I think that was difficult for Johnny Knoxville, but he did it. And I was very impressed by the honesty of the documentary, the structure of it. It's really fantastic. And that is really difficult for me to say because Johnny Knoxville, I only know him from two things, right? So the first one is Jackass. Now, I know that he was in Jackass, but I never watched even a single full episode of Jackass. I might have saw, 2 or 3 minutes of it and turned it off. Now, there were multiple seasons of Jackass, and there were multiple films of Jackass, and I'm quite aware of what it was. Now, the reason I never partaked in it or watched it is I got this sense when I was watching it that the gentlemen who were in, the men who were in this series were recreational drug users. Now, I got that idea at the time, and I made an assumption, and I said, this isn't for me, and I turned my back on it. And the reason why is recreational drugs are a trigger for me in that I have a fairly addictive personality, so I've never drunk any alcohol or done any drugs ever. And the reason why is I think I would be kind of susceptible to it if I went down that road. And I was very, very fortunate. My parents raised me in a way where I really was able to fight off the peer pressure, the limited amount of peer pressure there was in high school. And then once I was in college, I had my head on my head on my shoulders straight, and there's really no need for me to ever use any of those kind of things. But a little bit later in life, I had someone I cared for very, very deeply who was into recreational drugs, and I'm talking seriously recreational, things that most people would think were purely recreational and that doesn't harm anybody and is natural, all the buzzwords, who just kind of literally fell down from recreational drugs to very, very hard drugs. It happened very, very quickly, and this person lost every single thing they had except their life. And so to me, I see recreational drugs as absolutely gateway drugs, and it was pretty clear to me that Knoxville and his whole crew were into recreational drugs. And now 10, 15, 20 years later, that's not even a question. That's come out in interviews, and that's come out that that assumption was correct, that group was absolutely aligned with those things. So I 100% stayed away from from the whole Jackass thing, and it was really never a part of my experience at all. Then Johnny Knoxville was in the Dukes of Hazzard movie, the movie Dukes of Hazzard. Now, I actually watched that show when I was young. I lived in Savannah, Georgia, and so it was definitely a part of our culture, and come on, it had a Dodge Challenger with two dudes driving around in it at top speed, sending dirt flying, shooting bows with exploding dynamite on them. I mean, it was like, that show was epic, crazy. So I definitely watched the Johnny Knoxville in the Dukes of Hazzard film, and I thought he did a great job with it. And it also had that guy from American Pie in it. It was a good movie. I was a little disappointed that it didn't get a sequel, but I enjoyed it. And I know there aren't a lot of people who really cared that much about that movie, but I thought it was a really good movie. And one of the things is that when I saw that film, it seemed to me that Johnny Knoxville was trying to put his life together and really build a career. And I thought, okay, that's cool. Well, man, I will tell you right now, being evil, you could tell Johnny Knoxville is really doing everything he can to make the most of the celebrity he's had in his life. And this project was just stellar. Like, he did such a good job of telling the life story of Evel Knievel. I was absolutely blown away. And, the idea that, whatever he was doing in his youth, at this point, I think he's taking a very intellectual approach to life and doing everything he can to make the most of where he's landed in life. And I was really impressed. I really think of him as a good filmmaker now, and really, I really kind of wrote him off from his early career work, but I think Johnny Knoxville is a distinct talent, and he's a really smart guy. I mean, this was a brilliant film. It's definitely one of the best documentaries I've ever seen, by far. Okay, so let's talk about Evel Knievel. So, the best description of Evel Knievel's life in this movie was Johnny Knoxville. I think it was one of the people Johnny Knoxville got to talk about Evel Knievel. But one guy said, Evel Knievel's life can be described as fast, faster, disaster. And that is a really good description of what was shown in the film. By the way, spoilers for this documentary. I'm going to be talking about major spoilers for Being Evil. All right, so basically, Evel Knievel was a really distinctly, he started out, he did not have a father, okay? And he grew up in Butte, Montana, which was a really hard Scrabble town, right? And they said specifically that, if you had a beef with somebody, the two of you threw down. You just punched somebody in the face, they punched you in the face, you fought it out, and then that was it, right? And that was the way it was. And this is probably in the 40s or 50s, right? And so they said, this is a kid who didn't have a father and grew up in a hard Scrabble town. And as soon as he could, and actually, so then he had all these kind of little weird, almost like small-time cons going when he was kind of a teenager. And then he moved on from that and moved into insurance. And he was a stellar insurance salesman, which was just shocking. Actually, I'm going to say real quick, I'm going to use a Memory Palace device right now. I am going to be talking about a bat in a sailboat with a Werther's candy in his mouth. All right. So, sales. They talked extensively about Evel Knievel. Evel Knievel was not the first American daredevil, okay? But he absolutely was the one who executed it at a level that made the world take note, okay? And the other thing is, as far as being a daredevil on a motorcycle, nobody ever even approached him before or during his career. He was the very best there was on motorcycle daredevil tricks, right? And it talked about his career. So, and one of the things they talked about was he was an insurance salesman before he was a daredevil motorcyclist, right? And he broke every record in his company where he sold insurance. And they said, and then he moved on to sell motorcycles, and then he started riding the motorcycles, and that's how he became a motorcycle daredevil. Now, what was really fascinating to me was that they said that that's really the part of, there were three things that were part of his success. His ability to ride a motorcycle was stellar. He was incredibly good at riding motorcycles. He also was an incredible salesman. So he was really good before and after the gig, right? So he would jump over things on a motorcycle, right? He had this skill and the ability to do that. But what he did, what they said was really amazing about him was he could sell this trick before he did it. He could sell this trick again after he had done it, right? Just by telling stories and, those kind of things. And his salesmanship was just peerless, right? And I thought that was really interesting. And they also talked about it. Like they said, Robbie, his son, Robbie Knievel, it is arguable that his son was actually better at the jumping and had more control of the motorcycles than he did. And his son also massively benefited from major technology advancements where the tricks he could do, he was able to do the same jumps or even a little better jump much more easily and much more safely than his dad, but nobody cared. And the reason why was Robbie Knievel was not a salesman. And so, so it wasn't just his ability to do the tricks, it was his ability to sell the tricks. And then the last part was his ability to recover from when he fell. And that is crazy. Like that, that is a lot of things boiled into one person. So his salesmanship was a huge part of it. Okay. Now, they talk about his rise to stardom. He had this just rocket ship rise to stardom. And in about 7 years, he went from, like state fairs to being just a world-class guy who was known literally the world over and even journeying the entire world to jump over things on his motorcycle, right? Now, at this point, he began to get a lot of money and he began to spend a ton of money. He also fully embraced the idea of himself as a celebrity. So once he fully embraced himself as a celebrity, he was spending tons and tons of money, and he stopped being nice to people, and he was very, very cruel and angry with people, right? And really kind of a jerk. Even by his own words, he said he was really, really bad to a lot of people and really became a jerk at times, right? So there was a point where he was connected with a whole bunch of different people, but there was this one guy, I think his name was Sheldon Saltzman, and he was a promoter for Evel Knievel. And in Evel Knievel's late 30s, he authorized Sheldon Saltzman to write this book, about him. And Saltzman did write the book about him, and Evel Knievel hated it, really, really hated it. But he had actually given written consent for the book to be made. And I think what happened was he probably had a million things going on and he just didn't even read it. Just signed his name. And then when it came out, he got very, very angry. And then at that point, Evel Knievel actually took two men to where, and this is all on the record, it's all in the documentary, two men to hold Saltzman, and then he started beating him with a bat, right? He was then convicted for this, and he was sent to prison. And in the matter of 1 year, he lost every single licensing deal he'd ever made. By the way, he progressed licensing deals like tremendously. Like he did a tremendous job at doing this. He was one of the pioneers of licensing deals. And so he beat this man Saltzman very, very badly. And then he did this frontier justice thing in the courts where he said, yeah, I did it, do your worst, right? Well, the judge did, and he lost everything. He lost everything but his name, okay? And that was really fascinating. I was just really fascinated to hear exactly, what he lost and how quickly he lost it. And they repossessed everything. He had semi-trucks and cars and a house and a million different things, and they took it all away, okay? And then, so they told the whole story of this in the movie. And the last thing, so I've talked about the sailboat. I've talked about the bat. And now I'm going to talk about the Werther's candy. So when I looked at this movie, this was a great movie because you looked at his life and you say, it made me think, was it worth it, right? He was the greatest American motorcycle daredevil ever. He had world fame, and he had he became a legend, okay? But what he did was he lost almost all his friends, and the worst part, the part that makes me think, I don't think it was worth all of it, he lost his first wife, and it looks like he lost his second wife as well. And according to the book that Saltzman wrote, he had chosen to be with other women when he was married. And that, you know, if celebrity gets you there, I think if you stack up all the things he achieved and the fact that he harmed the person that he had vowed the most to protect, I would say it wasn't worth it, and that he should have taken a different path in life. Now, I don't want to judge him too harshly in that. I'm just saying, the reason why I say that is I'm in the same boat. I need to choose. Do I take these big risks, right? And even right now, there's questions like, do I take this risk or do I not take this risk? And a lot of times, you know, taking the risk is cool, but that's what I walked away from being evil with. That if you do this, this, and this, you can be cool. But the price is too high. The price of being cool is too high. And he allowed his celebrity to get to him. And I don't think he could have done it any other way. You know, like if you have all these things coming at you, you're going to make choices, and sometimes, you know, you fail, right? And I think that's what I walked away, is that at the end of the day, all he achieved was not worth the people that he hurt. I have incredible sympathy, and I also think if I had been in his position, you know, I definitely am a sinful man, and you know, I don't know what choices I would have made if I had been in the same position. So, but you know, having looked at that movie, I think any red-blooded American man looking at this film is going to say, this film was about taking risks, and is it worth it? And honestly, I walked away from that film saying, you should be more cautious. And so, one, I want to say thank you to Evel Knievel for living the way, for being honest about his life in the second half of his life. Because he would, by his own words, he said he had hurt many people, and that he had wished he had done right by his wife. And that says a lot. So I really appreciated his honesty as well. And I'm just going to finish this by saying I am amazed at the tremendous quality of this film that was produced by Johnny Knoxville, because I think I was very dismissive of his talent for a long time, and he truly has become a very good filmmaker, an intelligent man, and an introspective man. And I really appreciated the honesty he brought to this documentary, because it would have been easy to just do a hero worship piece. And it was really impressive. I highly recommend the film. Thank you.